Welcome to Pioneers in Payments, where payments experts share their insights. Now, here's our host, Donna Blum.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to this edition of Pioneers in Payments. This morning, I have the pleasure of speaking with Kirsten Trusko from Payments as a Lifeline. Welcome, Kirsten.
Thank you for having me.
I'm so glad you can join us, and I think that this is such a relevant and timely topic, so I'm really excited to hear what you're going to share today. But to get us started, would you mind sharing a little bit with our audience about yourself, your background in the payments industry, and the work that you do at PAL?
Absolutely. So my LinkedIn is fairly up to date. Been in financial services forever, banking, payments, insurance, fintech. Started in industry, went to KPMG, started a few payments practices there, worked with all the household names in payments and banking, but wanted to take that knowledge and that network and apply it also to a greater good. So now I run two nonprofit payments coalitions in emerging and underserved markets. Most of that is pro bono. And then I do management consulting and advisory to actually pay the bills. The earliest job in finance I had taught me that there is a population of underbanked in the US, 50 million. And so that's been kind of an undercurrent to all these years of whenever you can serve and bring in all of your friends who are also experts in payments and fintech. It's got to be profitable. It's got to be sustainable. But if we can address that underserved piece, that's always been a real motivator.
My first question for you is really just about payments as a lifeline. I'm curious what it is, how the idea came about. Could you share a little bit of your story?
Absolutely. It started back in Katrina. So was at KPMG. And at the time, prepaid was cutting edge, right? We had the only big four consulting firm that had a prepaid practice, and got a call from Red Cross saying, you know, that thing that gets money to people who don't have bank accounts, in New Orleans, a lot of the folks don't want to leave because they're waiting for checks. And so went to my boss, who was the head of banking, and said, look, could we help Red Cross convert? So it was just south of $1 million in pro bono work to convert Red Cross over. And now they use it, right? It's pedestrian anymore, but there's 1.54 million charities in the US, and there's Red Cross that uses it, right? So there's others that do gift cards and things like that. But every time a disaster has hit, we've gone out to all the same friends you all probably have, all the networks and processors and FIs, and said, guys, we need to stand up a sustainable organization. Every other industry, airlines, maritime, electric, water, healthcare, they have an industry group that stands at a low hum. And then when there's a disaster, they ramp up and they work together, and it's competitors. They are fierce competitors in the marketplace. But when it comes to disaster and humanitarian aid, they all can come together. And that was the idea here. Every time we tried to stand it up, we'd have all the group there, and then there wouldn't be a disaster for a year and everybody'd wander off. So when COVID struck, my husband's a bioinformaticist and said, look, this thing is going to be around for a couple of years. So we went back out to the friends you would know and said, hey, can we stand it up this time? And this time it stuck. And I know you've got some other questions where we'll tell more of the story, but it's an opportunity to show the power of payments, which I know sounds really corny, but there's things that we can do as payments and fintech and financial services, people and systems that nobody else can do. And there's such low awareness.
So let's go ahead and shift and talk now about the recent Hurricane Ian that hit Florida just last week, and how Payments as a Lifeline has responded and been involved with the recovery efforts there.
Well, it's exciting. Nothing ever works as fast as you want to, right? Especially when you're working with government, insurance companies, nonprofits, but through the PAL partners who are fintechs and FIs and all that. And we've got an advisory council, a PAL advisory council that is made up of government agencies, government leaders, some of the largest charities and foundations, some of the smallest. And you have to, we talked about pre-positioning for compliance, for regulatory, for all of that. You have to have everything set up in advance. Not just us as a coalition, but us as part of this community. So as soon as the water, we could see the storm coming, right? Reached out to some of our advisory council and said, what do you need? And in a disaster, there's a formal activation. And these organizations, their massive organizations, activate. For the first time, they now have payments and financial services to say, okay, we're going to send out first responders, we're going to have water and lodging. But what's the first thing you need to recover? Money.
Mm-hmm.
We're the ones helping with that money. So look at the PAL website. It's PAALPAY, palpay.org. There's a page there on the Ian response. Go to the media room and there's a brand new white paper on what is this, why is it important? And just one example of the power of payments in this. On that white paper, you'll see a pie chart and a line graph that represents one of the big pilots that captured the by MCC code and category where it was spent, right? We can't say where Donna spent her money, but you know, the data on the back end. So in sharing that with the advisory council and those who are the funders and saying, hey, here's where it was spent and here's how that's changed over months, their eyes got real big. They said, we didn't know that data existed and we've never had access to it before. So it is so exciting because now they can see that data and they can better plan to say, well, if a hurricane hits in New York, here's the kinds of things that are needed. If it hits in Florida, it's different. The charities and foundations have taken that data and given it to their donors who say, wow, you can actually prove to me how it was spent. So then their donors give them more,
right.
And they bring in more of their, I mean, you've done development, right? They bring in more high net worth friends. And it's this incredibly powerful feedback circle that could not have existed without all of your listeners who are, you know, in the payments and fintech world.
Wonderful. Well, I just love this concept and I'm just so intrigued by it. Obviously, there's a lot of different players. You have the financial institutions, you've got the charities and the government agencies, and then you have the people that are in need of the financial resources. So can you just talk a little bit about how all of that comes together?
That is a challenge because you're trying to get these entities together who don't really think of each other as coming together, right? But what's been really helpful, my co-founder and I have been involved pro bono for years in the disaster community, emergency operations centers. I bet I've spoken on PAL, well, since Katrina. I can't even tell you how many tens of times, or the PAL concept, but now we have PAL stood up. And so going out and speaking at, this is a whole market. Humanitarian aid is a whole market. Disaster is a whole market. It's a community, right? They have their own events, their own publications, their own circle, their tight circle. So part of it is going out and interfacing with each. And we've been really fortunate that the advisory council is incredible at making introductions and at saying, you know, I know you guys hadn't thought, to their colleagues, I know you hadn't thought about the key role of a financial institution or payments. The word fintech generally doesn't even get into the conversation. But you need money to recover. But most funders, the government and nonprofits, are hesitant to give money to people because all they've ever done is done a deposit into their checking account or handed them a gift card. that you can't report back the effectiveness of your work.
Right.
You also can't control for waste, fraud, and abuse, which one of our advisory council members has been in government for 25 years. And I think her quote might be on the website, but she said, waste, fraud, and abuse is on the ballot this election. Look at what all the fraud that's come out from the pandemic related things. We have a whole article on it, and it's, as payments people, it would make you want to scream, because those are the kinds of things we could have helped prevent. So if we're talking to government, we talk about waste, fraud, and abuse, talking to nonprofits, talk about dignity. Instead of like at Harvey, people waited outside when it was 100 degrees to get a box of stuff. And God bless the folks who supplied the stuff. But I've got my kids, I'm waiting in that long hotline. I get my box and I don't need diapers, right? It depended on what it was, versus handing somebody a PAL MasterCard, and they can go where they need to, when they need to, buy exactly what they want. And if that funder chooses, they can choose to shut off certain merchant category codes, adult gaming or adult entertainment, gaming, depends on who the charity or foundation is as to whether, what they want to shut off.
Right.
So it's a match to their mission, and we help improve it.
That's very good. So obviously there's some money involved here. Somebody's paying for these services. It's not the people receiving the aid. Can you talk a little bit about the finance behind?
Absolutely. Don, I'm going to step back one thing. We didn't talk about the insurance industry in that last question. So we were speaking at this huge state legislators event, like the biggest one that they have. And we're speaking on payments as a lifeline, because the legislators really want people to have their funds faster, so that they don't leave and not come back. In a big storm, 20 to 25% of the people never come back. So we're explaining PAL, and somebody stands up at the back of the room, an insurance person, and said, wait, interrupts the entire thing, right? Wait, could we use this in insurance? Like, yes, you could. So we could get the funds to people before it strikes, and they could better protect their homes. Yes, you can do that.
Wow.
And he keeps talking, right? We're trying to get that. So that would reduce our overall cost of claims. Yes, it would. And it would reduce the cost of our reinsurance. Like, yes, sir, it would. Now, will you sit down so we can finish? So even last week was with a group of insurers. So insurance is another sub piece of this. But so your question was, what is it? Tell us about participation. So PAL is an industry coalition. It is very purposely formed as a 501c3. So it's not a lobbying organization. It could lobby if need be, but a 501c3 is mission driven and has to show that you're fulfilling your mission. So as we talk to charities, government, for them, they don't pay to join Payments as a Lifeline. This is an organization, we call it a network for good, of FIs, fintechs, processors, program managers have a huge role here. We also, in this network for good, now have participants that are care tech. They work with the nonprofits and the people who take care of people for 3 to 5 years to get them back on their feet. So we've got care tech, we've got insure tech, because you got to get these claims. So it's really turning out to be this incredibly powerful network for good. Those who are PAL partners are paying members. It's a nonprofit, so it's a contribution. It's an annual contribution. It is scaled. Are you brand new, an early stage, or are you MasterCard and FIS? There's no fee at all for the card or the account recipient. Those who bear the costs are the funders. Okay. And each PAL partner, when we bring in a referral into the center of the table, they can choose to participate or to bid or not. And then they set whatever they're going to charge that funder, the insurance company, government, whatever it is.
Well, I really think that this is going to take off. So get ready.
Good, good.
So I'm kind of curious too, just about when people join, or when organizations join, I should say. What is that process? Do they have to meet certain criteria, or can any funding organization be involved? Can any FI be involved? What does that look like?
Yes, any can. They need to agree to the code of conduct, which includes you're not going to fee the end user. And they need to be involved. So involved could be participating in the PAL partner calls, which are every other week for 45 minutes. We've had some incredible guest speakers. It's super exciting. And then they can choose to be involved in other things. So we'll do special side calls. Who's ready for Ian? Or do a readout on the UN General Assembly. What happened there? What happened at Chicago Fed? All these different things. And they can choose whether or not to participate in any of those. But yes, as long as they're up for serving this industry.
Kirsten, how do you see PAL kind of changing the payments landscape as a whole? What's in the future?
So the PAL partners and the technology is, it's not rocket science for us, right? It's never been pointed at humanitarian aid or disaster. So what's been really interesting, Donna, is going to these conferences and really without exception, the financial services people who are interested, which is almost all of them, will generally say, I didn't know that there was a group like this. I want to be helping heroes. I'm not going to be out there like in Harvey. I was in rubber boots and a gas mask hauling through sewer water, right? They don't want to do that. But as payments and fintech and financial services, we can help heroes.
Yes.
Doing well while doing good, right?
Yes.
So that's just been incredible. And then on the advisory council, the insurance companies, government, nonprofits, it's been their reaction. Each of these conferences almost always were the first financial services to have ever shown up. And a lot of it, to the credit of financial services, it's a market we didn't even know was a market, right? So it's changing the perception. You can see it in their eyes, right? They'll come up and say, oh, you're a banker. Oh, you're an insurer, whatever. But once they hear the kinds of things that we've been talking about on this podcast, like, wow, yes, you're bankers and financial services, but you have a soul. Like, you're really engaged in this. And after the crash of 07, 09, there's a real perception and reputation problem of anything that touches financial services. So one of the founding members of the advisory council is with a charity that moved $1 billion in goods last year, right? So a big one. And he'll stand up and introduce when we're sharing the stage and say, all right, I know none of you like bankers, but these are the good guys. The ones at the table are the good guys.
If you were to speak directly with the people who are watching this podcast who represent financial institutions, can you basically share with them the reasons to get involved with PAL?
Absolutely. So there's probably two categories to that reply. One is it's an underserved market. As payments people, we look for that all the time. It's growing. If you do this correctly, it can be a profitable sector. These folks are sticky clients. Once we get the pilots done and it's running, they don't want to switch, right? This is just part of their heroes, right? This is just moving the money, and they don't want to have to think about it. So if you are someone who's looking at new verticals, this is it's got a lot of B2B, G2B, G2C, B2C. So it's a very strategic piece of work to consider. It's a $100 billion a year underserved market just in the US. So happy to share that on a call with anyone. But the second piece, it's a greater good. And how often do we, as payments and fintech people, get to help heroes, right? Besides just donating our own personal money, this is really taking the power of payments and all the things that that is not rocket science and pointing it at this other industry. And you really, some of the feeds that I get on as part of these WhatsApp groups and some of these activations, it's heroes work, and the people are incredible. We're just doing a small but critical part, because without money, you can't do anything.
Right.
And doing well while doing good might kind of be a summary of it. For those of you who are employers, if you look at the statistics now of millennials and Gen Z coming out, it's not so much about the money anymore. Yes, you have to pay them well and benefits and all, but it's about making a difference. Do I believe in the mission of the company I'm joining? Will I stay longer because I believe in the mission? And this is a mission. It's a greater good. It's a new profitable sector. If anybody wants to talk about it, Don, I think you're going to share the contact information, but go on to palpay.org. You can submit at the bottom. You'll feel really good about this, and your board or your stockholders will feel good about it too.
Well, and something you mentioned earlier as we were talking is about the reputation of financial institutions. And I would imagine that being involved in this, I mean, it's a financial institution that has a heart for people, right?
Yes.
So that can only have a positive effect on the organization's reputation. So I guess that's another potential benefit.
Hey, Donna, on that one real quick, you're exactly right. Earned media is stuff you don't pay for. It's because you get in, you did something positive. You literally cannot buy earned media. And think of what, if you do this right, what impact it could have on your business having that earned media.
And then just going to bed at night knowing that you have done something for the good of your fellow men and women. So yep. I love it. I think it's great. Kirsten, we've already talked a little bit about your website. We're definitely going to share your web address. If individuals do want to learn more about Payment as a Lifeline, is there any other information you want to share about how they can get in touch with you or learn more? Absolutely.
So the website at the bottom, whatever you put in there goes to support at PalPay, and we've got teammates who monitor that. My direct is kt@palpay.org and PAAL.
Okay.
PAY.org.
Payments as a Lifeline, right?
Yes.
Got it.
Lots of conferences coming up that we'll be at. I don't know if folks are going to be at Money 2020, but other things coming up. So think about what you just said, Donna, it makes you feel good. You're helping your fellow man, but you can do it during work hours, right? It doesn't have to be getting off work and then going and spending another 5-6 hours, right? This is part of your work, and you can engage your coworkers in this. It's the nonprofits have called this transformational, which is like, wow, that's really cool. But they said never before have we been able to engage with the financial services industry in this positive way that benefits everyone, and you feel good about it, and it's part of work. Yes, I love it. Well, thank you so much for all that you do there at Payments as a Lifeline, and thank you for sharing your time and just all of this information with our audience. And I just want to thank everybody for joining us today. Have a wonderful day. Thank you.